Alright, welcome to another episode of JYR Trades. Today, guys, we're going to be covering Friday, April 10th. And I gotta say, Friday wasn't a normal day. It was exactly the type of day that I can say that humbles you, but also teaches you something at a higher level. Alright, now going into the New York, guys, we had the structure suggested a potential expansion, okay, or a repair move. However, CPI news, okay, when it released an hour before, that kind of changed the market behavior completely. It shifted. Okay. Now, before I continue, guys, everything that I share on this channel, remember that it's for educational purposes. It's not financial advice. However, I will say this: if you want to learn how to trade market structure, if you want to learn how to trade auction theory, equilibriums, liquidity, in other words, if you want to become a better trader by learning to trade with the institutions and not against them, then you're in the right place. All right. With that, guys, let's go ahead and continue. So again, guys, we had a potential reclaim, a potential continuation, but instead of a directional move, guys, NQ turned into a rotational, choppy environment. And guess who got chopped? This guy here. All right. So in this video, guys, I'm going to break down how market opened relative to New York value and the POCs, why CPI disrupted the expected structure, how the move actually happened from a certain high all the way down to the negative 125, and then why price actually returned back to auction zero. Now, I'm going to talk about the key mistakes that I made during this particular session, because there are several of them that I made. And the biggest lesson, guys, which is to learning to identify an auction, okay, and versus an expansion day. Because again, an auction can be more easily described like a rotational day within a rotation, right? Within value. But here, this was different. We were outside of value. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about that, because you know what? Not only did I have losses on Friday, I lost, but it was a breakthrough day. All right, so guys, let's talk about how the market opened. That's the first thing I want to talk about here. All right, so we have market right here, right before New York opens. Okay, and the first thing I'm going to ask is, where is my New York value, guys? And you know what? New York value was actually from this white line right here to this white line here. That was New York value. So that means that we were not only outside of value, but we were actually north of it. So the idea was, are we looking for a repair back into it and then, continue down? Or actually, are we looking for a minor pullback into New York value and then eventually continue into the top side? That's what you're kind of looking at when you're looking at, are we opening inside or outside value? In this case, we're looking at outside value. So the next big question is, where are my mids and where are my POCs? So this is where the next clue told me that something wasn't right. Okay, and what I mean by that is, all right, so we have value here, and inside value we have the first clue was the Asia mid, kind of pointing north, leaning north, I should say, not leaking, right? And then the next value, or the next key level that I had here, was a POC, and I don't remember which one this was. I don't know if it was London or Asia. I want to say that it was Asia. Okay, and then we have our London mid, and then we had our London POC. Okay, now right off the bat, guys, when I looked at this, I'm like, okay, normally I like to see my POCs above both mids, and I didn't see that today. They were kind of mixed, but nonetheless, we were leaning longs. We were leaning to go north of structure. All right, so that was one clue that I thought I had there. So I'm like, okay, it looks to me overall though, our POCs are leaning north. Okay, our mids, we got the lowest mid is below us. So that told me right off the bat that it felt like to me that we were going to have a trap to the downside and then we were going to go up. Okay, that's what it felt like. Now remember though that at 6:30 in the morning we had CPI news, and as you guys know, CPI happens about, I don't know, once, twice a month. And so it happened, and I need you guys to understand that this right here already changes the environment. This is not a normal structured day anymore because of this. Now, I found out about it the hard way. Okay, so pre-market read, guys: potential expansion, repair, possibly a slight bias. Okay, I wasn't sure again. Something fell off, but now I understand why, and that's what we're gonna talk about. All right, so let's talk about what happened. Okay, with the move. Okay, so you'll see that when priced open, okay, we had our we had a little bit of a push up, okay, and then we had a little bit of a push down, and we had a little bit of a rotation chop here. And I don't know if you, again, earlier I told you guys that I felt that we were going to first, again, we were gonna have a trap going south. And if you look here, price eventually comes down to the POC, all right, the London mid, this POC, and then eventually price comes back up to auction zero once again and gets rejected, okay, and then once again it comes back up here. Now my auction zero, I put my zero here at the migration, and you can see that price push up the highest to the 62. Now you'll see that it comes back down to the mids, okay, to the POC, New York value, comes into New York value once again, and then it rejects right at London mid, I'm sorry, at Asia mid, rejects into BWAP, and then it just does this back and forth here, okay. And you see that at the end of the day, it kind of came back up into auction zero. Guys, this was not an expansion at all, as you can see. This was auction behavior. It reset the auction on this specific day. I'm gonna tell you, I had 3 losses on this particular day, and I should have stopped at the first one. And the reason why I didn't stop at the first one was because my mind was still thinking we were in expansion. Okay, let me talk about them here. With the first loss, and I'll tell you, the first loss, guys, I didn't listen to my intuition. And the reason why I say I didn't listen to my intuition was because, remember, I said we're going to have a trap to the downside, and then it's going to possibly expand to the north. So in all honesty, when I looked at this initial move, okay, and it started coming back up here, for some reason when I got this first entry on Remitar on my post auction zero migration, for some reason I took along, and I literally told myself, man, if this thing shorts right now, I'm gonna regret it. And you know, I took that long. Price comes down to the 50. I notice it doesn't get out of my Remitar cloud here, nor the Remitar's red line here. Remember, Remitar has this boundary here. All right, this is Remitar 2. Can't remember, 2.2 I think it is, and I have this other line here, right? You see this structure here. So I'm like, okay, it's not going past it, so I stayed in the trade, right? I was in drawdown, and then here I started getting some take profit here, some green, and I was like, okay, there's something going on. And in all honesty, guys, I should have waited until price cleared outside of this boundary here, this one or even this one here, and I didn't wait. I didn't wait. And so once price started hit it here and I saw it was a rejection, I was like, man, it felt like at that moment I was like, I should have listened to my intuition. Because this wasn't just one rejection here, two, this was a third rejection here. And I knew, I'm like, it's about to break to the downside somewhat. So what happens? Price does go down. Right? Remember I said it's gonna trap. It's gonna trap, and at this point my drawdown was large. So I decided to exit out. Exit out because I'm like, okay, it's invalidating my trade at this point. And I'm like, we were looking still at that time, I was looking for an expansion to the top side. So I'm like, maybe I was wrong today. Normally, my Remitar cloud here, once it gets out, it goes in the clear direction that it's gonna go. So I'm like, maybe today we were off. And that's when I had to figure out what was going on that day. And so what does price do, guys? It targets, you got the VWAP movements right here. All right, we got VWAP. And we have our POCs here, right? One of our POCs. And then it just starts going back. But interestingly, guys, it doesn't go back all the way through. Comes again back to our Remitar cloud at auction zero post migration. Goes back up. Okay. Now I gotta tell you, right here, what did I do? Once I saw price was going up, I decided to take a trade. Go long. I felt comfortable here. I'm like, hey, we're breaking. Let me recover. I had one loss at that point. And what happens? Next candle starts coming back down. And then I see that we get a consolidation. And I'm like, okay. And I see it starts coming back. I see a rejection here at auction zero. I see that it leaves the structure and I decide to get in here. I start to see, no, I take it back. My second trade was here. When I saw that structure had broken out of the cloud here, I decided that I wanted to target New York Valley area high. And I targeted that, and look what happened. It didn't tag it this much. I was off by 3 points. And what does it do? Starts coming back, hits my stop loss, I'm out. And on the third one, remember, this is VWAP. I think the third one, if I recall right, I think this is where I went in. I felt comfortable. I'm like, okay. And at that point, guys, I shouldn't have been trading anymore. Honestly, after the first one, I should have been done. That's where the discipline comes in, and you have to stick to your rules. Okay? So I saw it started coming back into my cloud. I exited out, and I'm like, you know what? It's not my day today. And I knew something was off. I'm like, something's not right. And so I just continued to see it here from this point, and I just saw, price went up to the positive 62, and today was different, because everything that I've learned so far, it really didn't apply today because it was an auction day. And what I mean by that is, if you look here, my move to the downside did not come from, well, you can say that it came from a minor rejection here, right here, and then it came back down. But it just wasn't your typical, this looks like more like an expansions, tag. And it was a rotational. Rotational usually comes down, comes back up, and then down. Kind of like this here. But it would have continued coming down.
But Asana helps you handle it. Asana AI.
Sorry about that. So I saw that price did come down to the negative 125. Now what's interesting about this day is that after I did some more digging, I'm like, okay, Well, what happened here? What triggered, the 62 to the 125? I said it didn't feel normal. It didn't feel right. When I say a rotational day, remember the day before we had a rotational day, if we have a trap to the downside, let's just say, right? If we have a trap to the downside, we know it's going to go usually from New York Valley Area High to Valley Area Low, or vice versa. Or our Valley Area High is here, our Valley Area Low is down here. It wasn't that. And it wasn't our London POCs, Delta, Valley Area High, and Valley Area Low either. It just wasn't. So, and neither Asia. So I looked at it, and that's when I started doing the research, and I'm like, okay, CPI throws off the structure. It injects liquidity, and you can see it this right here. This wasn't normal. This right here threw off the rest of the structure for the day. So when we have a CPI day, guys, I learned that structure, you have to really have it confirmed, and you have to let the market settle before you take a trade. Okay. Now this is what I did find out on this specific day. So when I measured this, guys, the session was about 173 points, right? 173 points. The question kind of becomes, okay, how do we figure out where price is going to go at the highest, right? And if you know anything about liquidity, is that it's going to have a certain target. You're not going to be able to see it, right? And I'm trying to gather my thoughts because on Friday I had them here. But if you look at this here, the move, look at that, 172 points. So once the auction found the ceiling here at the top, it moved down to the 125. Guys, what happened on Friday is not that I misread the market completely. It's just I misclassified the day. This was an auction day. Okay. Now this is where I'm going to tell you, this is where I'm going to level up. This is where you're going to level up. Is that when you have a CPI day, it's going to disrupt the market. You need to be extra careful. Structure is not always going to be valid, especially on CPI days. It's either going to be auction versus an expansion. So if we have a structure set up pre-market for an expansion and CPI just happened, be ready for an auction. And guys, this is where I realized on Friday that I'm stepping into a new level, because now it's not just about setups, it's about the environment. And I'm gonna be honest with you. When I looked at Friday morning, when I saw this right here, the way we had Valley Area High, New York Valley Area High, and the way we had a mix match of the mids and the POCs. In other words, if my POCs would have been both higher and my mids would have been both lower, I would have said, "Ooh, it's a trap day. It's gonna go up." But here, this was kind of giving me a clue here. Something wasn't right, and I didn't listen to that. Now, and the first thing I said before market open, I said it's a trap. It's a trap to the downside. So I felt that the first real move, somewhat move, not the main move, but the move that could possibly make you money after things kind of start settling, was going to go to the downside. And what did I do? I decided to target along. Okay, target along somewhere around here. And I should have just listened. Had I gone to the downside, I probably would have just targeted the 50 at this point. Okay, maybe the 62, stayed in for the drawdown, and then eventually I would have hit my target here. Maybe I would have targeted the POC here. Okay, and I would have been done for the day. I would have been done. I would have come out with a green day. Okay, but in hindsight, when I look at it, okay, I would have not learned that it was an auction day. Or what is an auction day? Because this is the first time I came across it since I've been learning market structure. So again, the next time CPI happens before market opens, and you look at pre-market structure and you look like, hey, it looks like an expansion or repair. Ask yourself, is it truly an expansion or repair, or possibly an auction day? Look at your mids and look at your POCs. They will tell you a story. If POCs and mids align, in other words, you got both POCs below or above, let's just say both POCs above the mids, then you know there's possibly a trap to the downside, and then we move up. But when you got them mixed around the way they were here, there's a good chance that something is off. All right. Now, guys, Friday did not set me back. All right. It did move me forward. Now I know what to look for next time. All right. I did finish the week green. I will say that. Okay. It didn't take me back completely. It didn't regress me from my progress. I think it was about 2.5 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. I had, since I started journaling this, I started, I don't know, about a month ago. About 3 weeks ago, I had a major setback where I had 4 losses. And that day brought me back. I mean, those losses accumulated and it took away progress I had for like 2 weeks. This particular Friday did not throw me back. Did not throw me back like that day. It was about a quarter of it. But I will say it would have been 1/10 of it if I had just stopped on that first loss.
You probably think
Okay.
Squarespace is just a
So
website.
with that said, guys, hopefully you learned something about Fridays. And I gotta tell you, everywhere I saw on Fridays, social media, with some of these major traders out there that are on social media that I kind of follow around, and some of them are really good about market structure. They all said the same thing on Friday. They, pretty much said that they had a green week. In other words, they had a great week, but that Friday was extremely choppy, difficult to trade. And you know what? A lot of them did say Friday was not a tradable day, you know, and that's what you need to understand, that not every single day, not every single day is going to be a tradable day, and that's a winnable day. Understand that. Learn when to not step in. All right, guys. With that said, if you did enjoy this episode and you want to continue to learn and want to continue to join me on this journey, it would mean the world to me if you would hit that subscribe button, like, share, and comments, and we'll see you on the next one.